Every week, millions of people move home, and as it's one of the most stressful things that you'll do in life, you need to get it right. I'm Rebecca Jane, and together with the region's best property experts, we'll be giving you some top tips and expert advice, shining a spotlight on a different area from across the Midlands, and getting to know a little more about our guests and what they look for in a home. Property is ever evolving and always a fascinating subject. We'll guide you on what you need to know and what you need to look out for here on Midlands at Home. Hello and welcome to Midlands at Home. On today's show, we'll be talking about buy-to-lets. And if you're considering accommodation for your son or daughter or grandchildren for university and unsure of how lettings work, then we're going to help you make the process as simple and as straightforward as possible. My guest today is Julia Williams from Premier Places. Julia, welcome to Big Centre.
Hi. I'm pleased to be here.
It's lovely to have another girl on the show. Hurrah!
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your background in property, because your agency specialises in lettings and property management, doesn't it?
Well, actually, I was a former head teacher, would you believe?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was. And I've always had an interest in property. I wanted a change in direction. So when the opportunity came up to acquire Premier Places, I thought, well, let's go for it.
And how long ago was that?
Oh, 7 years ago now, yeah.
And what a change from being a head teacher and now running a...
A complete change. Since then, we've had 500 managed properties that we manage for landlords. We've won awards. We've got a sister brand now, which is called Student Places.
Brilliant.
So all systems go.
That's a big area in itself, isn't it, sort of student?
Oh, tremendous, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And you said you were a landlord before, so obviously you had that experience firsthand that you can obviously put into the agency.
Definitely. I found it so useful for running your own agency, the fact that I was a landlord myself. I knew the sorts of things that landlords wanted, just to give that extra service, really.
Yeah, and you do the residential side and HMOs, which we'll come to in a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk us through a little bit about residential lettings.
Well, in terms of...
Well, if you were starting out, you know, there's a lot of people nowadays, they don't want a mortgage, maybe they want to enjoy the lifestyle, so they're thinking of, you know, getting a letting instead. How does that work? What sort of deposits are required?
Well, basically, first of all, you need to sort of think about what sort of property that you want to rent out, first of all, and have just some key questions in your head. Whether you want it near a school, near travel, you know, transport and things like that. Once you've done that, you go to an agent, you look online, and then you just basically just find properties that you want, book viewings.
Yeah, and they go quickly, don't they? I've got a friend that's looking at the moment, literally within, you know, half a day or a few hours, they're gone.
As soon as you find a property you like, you can't hang around because there's more demand than supply at the moment.
Right.
So...
And then I suppose from a landlord's point of view, you've really got to look after your place as well and look after your tenants so that you can
It's so important. You know, you've got to have nice, neutral decor in the house. If a tenant asks for you to, you know, do maintenance, you've got to move quickly, really, because if you look after your tenants, tenants will look after you.
Yeah, definitely. And so the other side of lettings, which a lot of us might not know so much about, is HMOs. Just break down, what does that stand for?
Basically, HMO really means house in multiple occupation.
Yeah.
So if you're going to rent out an entire property, whether it be a flat or a house, to 3 people or more, as part of the Housing Act 2004, the landlord has got legal duties that they need to abide by.
Right.
So, or if you've got maybe a house that you're going to convert into bedsits, the same goes for that. So generally what landlords need to do is go to their local council and find out sort of their requirements as well, because it alters from different local authorities to others.
Right. So depending on where you live, there's different things in order for it to be, you know, HMO approved.
Yeah. But generally, you know, it's mainly on safety. You know, making sure you've got fire doors, gas safety certificates, fire distinguishers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and then there's some investors, I was reading a brilliant book lately on holiday that one investor in particular was saying, actually, I will only buy HMOs just for that sort of peace of mind that, say I've got 5 rooms and they're being let out, one person lets me down, at least I'm going to get the money from, say, the other 4.
Exactly. I think generally nowadays quite a few people are going down the HMO route because on an annual return you actually get more money.
Yeah.
renting out your property per room instead of an entire house, really. So we're finding more and more landlords going down that route, so they can let to maybe students, doctors, nurses, people that may be on social housing. There's more and more people that are looking to rent property as opposed to buy.
Yes.
And they can't always afford an entire property.
No. And they might not need it. They only need that room if you're working away from home and you just want a room for the week. You don't
We're
need
finding
the whole...
more and more need these days. So.
Yeah. And I think students, I mean, that's a big area in itself, isn't it? Student accommodation.
It's massive. It's so different to when I was a student.
Yeah, I know. I think when I was a student, sort of the properties that you could get, put it this way, they weren't nice. Can you get nice student accommodation now?
Yeah, they've got some amazing properties,
have they?
really, yeah. They've got Wi-Fi, white goods.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, to be honest, some student properties are really high spec, so... Yeah.
And how do you find, so we talk a high-spec property with students, obviously landlord wants to keep it that way, but realistically knows that they are, it's going to be let out to students. How do you kind of, from a landlord's perspective then, look after your property and ensure that it's going to be...
I think as a landlord, you have to look at it as it's a business.
Yes.
Okay? You can't get too personal. It's not your own home.
Yeah.
But as long as you've got, sturdy equipment, you know that you've got to go in perhaps at the end of the tenancy to repaint it or something, I'd advise to have inspections.
Yes.
Quarterly inspections, just to check that your property is still standing. But generally, it usually finds it's just cosmetic things and a really good clean, thorough clean.
I think clean
professional clean.
Yes, I would say professional clean, especially when your students have moved out. I know certainly from my experience, I remember my friends the grass was that long. I think it was up to our knees, had to get the strimmer on it. It was just, whereas now I'm really particular about my lawn, so just how times change.
But also for landlords, generally students have to have a guarantor.
Yes.
So if you do have any issues or any problems, there's always a guarantor there as well. So
that's it. You've always got parents to kind of back you up. But I think that's why maybe a lot of parents or grandparents maybe think about purchasing perhaps an HMO, a student-let property, rather than sort of putting the money elsewhere, getting a property themselves. But it's quite a daunting task, isn't it, thinking of purchasing a property to let out?
It is daunting, and the general outlay anyway is far more expensive than perhaps if you were letting a residential property.
Yeah.
So you have to bear that in mind. You also have to bear in mind, if you are going to let to students, you're going to have some periods where it may not be rented out.
True.
So you just have to balance it up to think about what it is that you want. And also, it's a long-term investment.
Yeah.
You can't look at it as a short-term investment at all.
Yeah, very true. What about, because we were talking about the HMOs, can you turn a house that you've got, an existing property into an HMO as long as you comply with all the different regulations?
Yes, definitely. But like I said, you really need to make sure you go to your local council, make sure that the road that you're in, you are able to, because some councils nowadays are actually saying no HMOs in particular streets and things. Yeah, so, you need to do your background work, make sure you research the property really well. So, but it is possible, definitely, yeah.
And you find that there is a lack of properties. Is there a lack of 2 beds, 3 beds, or just right across the board?
It's right across the board, but generally I'd say 2 to 3 beds. As soon as a 3-bed property comes on our market, it goes straight away.
Does it?
Particularly, if it's a really nice one in a nice area, near nice schools, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They go so quickly.
Yeah, so I suppose it's just there does need to be more stock. Well, does that affect the price then? If there's a lack, the prices tend to go a little bit higher, or
not really. I think prices are fairly stable. I think it's just you need more of them, really. So.
Yeah. Definitely. So the letting side, you've got the HMOs, you've got the letting side. If you're starting out, so you're going to get your first investment, what would be your top tip to get your first, perhaps, residential letting?
I definitely look at the location.
Right, so still important, just like if you're
location is so important. Make sure you look at the location. Do your research. Think about, how long you want to invest for. Think about what sort of return you're looking for, because you have to weigh up all these things. And also, think about your general budget overall. What will you do, say, if interest rates go up?
Yeah.
Can you manage the repayments? What happens if you have void periods? All of these things. You've just got to do a lot of background.
Yeah.
You could look on property portals, for instance, look to see what's letting, what's not letting.
True. Look at locations, what's popular, what's not. I suppose when you're close to train stations and everything else, then that's always quite good.
Also, go to agents, ask them. You don't have to use them, but you can ask them for their advice and get them perhaps to do the work for you and suggest certain places. So,
and that's the beauty of your company. You do the property management as well, so you can really guide your clients as well if they are thinking of making that.
Yeah, we guide a lot of landlords, really. We do have quite a few landlords that come to us and say, we're interested in investing in a buy-to-let. Can you advise us certain areas? So we do that to help them.
So do you find people are a bit daunted to start it out, and it is kind of like holding their hand a little bit through the process?
Definitely, because it's just such a massive thing to do, isn't
it? It is, it's huge.
It's a huge investment, particularly if you're thinking about it, it's a long-term one.
Yeah.
You know, and if you've never done it before, you don't know what to do. It's just helping them so that they don't make mistakes, really, and jump into something and think, oh, I've seen a property, I'll buy it.
Yeah, you've got to be careful, haven't you?
So careful.
And I think a lot of people are thinking perhaps of buy-to-lets, with pensions being difficult now, that actually purchasing a property and using it, you know, in terms of a pension.
Definitely. But, you know, properties go up and down, and people need to just appreciate that and just go for it for the long haul, really.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be talking more after the break, so don't go anywhere. I look forward to seeing you in just a few minutes' time. Welcome back. This week's spotlight area is Moseley. Moseley is a suburb of Birmingham, around 3 miles south of the city centre, and it developed from around 1860 through to the interwar period. The area is a popular cosmopolitan residential location and leisure destination, and was recently named as the best urban place to live by the Sunday Times. Ask any Brummie about Moseley and they will invariably describe it as Bohemian. There's even a cocktail bar on the high street called Bohemian, a trendy district famous for its pubs, independent shops and boutiques, and cultural scene with a number of bars and restaurants. Moseley is one of the more affluent areas of Birmingham. It still retains a village character, and its focal point is the Green at the crossroads with St Mary's Road, Salisbury Road and Alcester Road. This is the heart of Moseley, where the shops, pubs, cafes and restaurants provide a lively and cosmopolitan character. St Mary's Church is the parish church and provides an impressive backdrop to the historic centre of Moseley. Moseley dates from the late 19th century, when the idea of the British home was at its aspirational peak, and the architects did not hold back, with the homes being works of art. Architectural styles range from mid-Victorian villas, individual architect-built arts and craft houses, impressive 3-storey Edwardian residences, modest railway workers' cottages, and inter- and post-war semi-detached dwellings. The district was the childhood haunt of author J.R.R. Tolkien and attracts fans of his famous The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings stories to the city. Moseley is a little oasis with a great sense of community, fantastic open green spaces with Cannon Hill Park on its doorstep, and it's very easy to see why, with so much on offer, it's just so popular. The lovely Moseley. Now, location, if you're purchasing property, obviously commands a premium. If you are a landlord and you're investing in an area, is it important to think about location the same as you would if you were buying?
Definitely, because obviously people want to move there, they want to live there with their families or, you know, as couples. So location is just vital, really. It can be make or break between whether you have a premium rent or not.
Yeah.
So.
And I suppose if you purchase that property and it's close to that train station, as opposed to if you buy a beautiful, you think, oh, it's a lovely property, it's in the country, you've got views of the countryside, very nice, but you might not get the same as if you were to pick, you know, a similar house, even smaller house, but to have it where it is close to local transport.
Definitely. It's got to be practical for whoever's living there, really.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Now, if you are a landlord, perhaps you've made that, we talked about it before the break, you've made the decision, you've decided that you're going to get a buy-to-let. Talk us about the process from a landlord. So you've picked an agent, so you've picked yourself, you've got your agency.
We expect your property to be marketed. That would be really good.
And marketed properly.
Marketed properly, you know, on all the all the letting portals.
Yeah, your Rightmove, your Zoopla and so on.
All of those. You know, you want fantastic pictures to make sure that your property looks good.
And don't they make a difference? Good pictures make such a difference. When you're browsing through,
definitely.
The dark pictures, you can't really see the room. You
nice big
switch off.
light pictures. That's what you're looking for, really. And then once that's happened, you know, we'll go out, show tenants around the property.
Yeah.
And then once a tenant likes the property and is interested, showed an interest, after that you need to make sure that you actually credit check and reference the tenant properly.
Right, OK.
That is so, so important.
Yeah.
And once that's happened and everybody's happy, you can let the property. But what you really need to do is make sure that you take a deposit,
Yes.
which is usually 1 month's rent
Okay.
in advance. And then when they move in as well, you take an additional month in advance as well. So you've got, you know, a month in advance of their actual tenancy.
Just should anything go wrong in the property and you need to use some of that for a bit of maintenance perhaps at the end.
Definitely, definitely. There are some occasions, though, where it's actually quite prudent to have a guarantor as well.
Right, OK.
So
particularly with a student accommodation, you have to have a guarantor there.
Definitely. So if anything goes wrong or they're struggling to make the payments, you've got a backup as a guarantor as well, which they'll be also credit checked and referenced as well.
Yes, definitely. Do you find, because I've got a friend at the moment, who knows a friend who's trying to rent, and they're going along to these properties, they're falling in love with certain ones, but there's like 4 of them that all want it. So it's actually the landlord that's then sifting through and going, I think I'll go for this one. Do you find that?
Sometimes. I mean, we don't do it with our agency. Basically, it's first come, first served.
OK.
But some agencies don't. Some agencies give the landlord the choice.
Yeah.
But I'd say if you see a property that you like, move quickly. We have so many applicants that are like, oh, I like it. And then
thinking about it.
Yeah. By the time they come to us, the property's gone. So it's so important.
What about animals? Because I know some landlords not too keen if perhaps you've got a dog or...
It's harder. It's harder to actually find a property that you can rent if you've got an animal.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, though. Some landlords take an additional deposit to cover that, insist on a professional clean when you leave. But generally, we have, you know, applicants that come to us and they really do struggle to find a nice property.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point, actually, because at the moment we are looking, you know, we're moving. We need to find a rental for a couple of months. I can't find, and I typed in the whole of Worcestershire and I couldn't find one place. And I thought, well, actually, that looks really nice. So I suppose from a landlord's point of view, it's just, you haven't got to spend the earth for something to look just neutral and inviting, really. Do you think that's quite important?
Yeah, very important. You don't want garish colours. You just want it neutral for somebody else to move in.
Yeah.
And just feel like it's, you know, their home.
Yeah.
You know, nice, clean carpets. Cleanliness is vital.
Yeah.
It's so important to make sure you get a professional clean, make the property look good, make sure the gardens are cut, have just simple curtains and make sure white goods always go down well, simple white bathrooms.
Yeah.
Just nice.
Yeah, and then just looking after it, isn't it? So
Definitely.
I suppose that's why you got that deposit, that if anything does need doing. Do you tend to find professional clean is something with each and every tenancy, you do have that professional clean just to bring it
we
right?
insist on it, to be honest with you, because, you know, everybody's idea of clean is not the next person. It really, really varies. So if you get, you know, steam clean your carpets and just make sure it's nice and fresh for somebody to move in.
Yeah.
It'd be perfect.
That's all you want, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, we were talking about students, and it's always an interesting topic, isn't it? And you do a lot of student lets, and you've got a place here, actually, that we're going to show you, the pictures. I mean, what a lovely student property.
I know.
They do exist. And then it's keeping them looking as fresh as that, isn't it? So...
Definitely. I think my advice to any landlord that's renting to a student is it's a business. You've got to look at it like that. You can't take it too personally as if it's your home.
Yes.
And generally, students, although they're very, very messy, they do look after the property. You've just got to bear in mind that you may have to clean it with a professional clean. You will have to, you know, decorate it at the end, maybe.
Yeah.
But you just consider it's not your house. So just, you know.
I think it's hard for the parents, isn't it? Particularly for mums that go in and go, oh, gosh, you're living in such a mess and we need to clean it. And, you know, it's, I suppose if you have got that guarantor, your parents are also going to ensure that, you know, it's looked after, isn't it?
Definitely.
Now, you must have come across some stories, perhaps some horror stories, with, you know, with lettings, all sorts of things that crop up. Have you got any?
Oh, one or two, really. One was that we had a landlord that came to us who'd rented out the property but didn't do any credit checks or any reference checks. was having huge issues because the tenant didn't pay.
Oh no.
Yeah. And that just caused a nightmare because then they had to go to court and all sorts because the tenant refused to move out.
Right.
My advice is, you know, make sure that you do those credit checks, those reference checks. Make sure you do have a guarantor. You know, if you're a landlord doing it by yourself, really give them your tenant or the applicant an interview, really. Talk to them. Find out if they've rented before. Speak to the previous landlords.
Yeah.
That's really, really important. So.
Yeah, and you've got to find out about income and get everything checked. It is check with everything. But I suppose that's there for a reason, isn't it? So then these stories don't sort of repeat themselves.
Definitely. And another story I had was a lovely landlady. She'd had a HMO previously before, but had actually done some an extension on the property.
So she would have thought that's brilliant, great, had an extension, more
We found the
space.
tenants, everything was fine,
Yeah.
and then we found out that she'd put on an extension, which then made the HMO invalid. So then we had to pull the lets, basically. She had to go back to the council. So if you have got a HMO, and you do any, extra work,
Yeah.
make sure that you check it out and make sure it complies with the HMO.
Oh, and how long does that take with the council, generally, to turn around?
It totally depends on the councils. You know, it could take 3 weeks, it could take a month,
Oh,
it
really?
could take a little bit longer. It just depends.
Yeah, so it's not something that you can turn around in a few days. It tends to take that
No.
bit of time.
Yeah, definitely.
And do you find, I suppose, with time and with different tenants moving in and moving out, do you find there is a crossover period generally with
There
lettings?
is. I mean, I can only talk about from our experience.
Yeah.
If we know a tenant is going to be moving out, we start marketing 2 months beforehand. That's what we do. And we usually find the crossover period is between 2 to 3 weeks where the
Yeah.
property will be empty. It doesn't always happen like that, of course, but that's generally what we try to do. But landlords really just need to bear in mind that, you know, sometimes the crossover period may be a little bit longer.
So you just have to allow for that. If you are purchasing a property, you have to think, okay, well, actually,
Yeah.
if it is a 6, it starts at a 6 month, the minimum.
6 month minimum. Well, actually, it's not the minimum, but that's generally what people do.
Yeah.
You can have a tenancy for as long as you want, or as short as you want, but generally it's 6 months.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And I look forward to seeing you for more next week on Midlands Ahead.